They smirked when I asked them to clean up. Not even a pause. Not even a glance in my direction. Plastic cups collapsed like fallen dominoes across the floor. Pizza crusts and crushed soda cans littered the rug. My rug. Bass thudded from the Bluetooth speaker in the corner, and someone had cracked the base of the staircase railing. The smell of burnt we'd drifted out from somewhere. Probably the downstairs bathroom they never bothered to ventilate. It was our home. It was supposed to be. I stood there, just past the threshold of the living room, still wearing my work boots, the smell of insulation and sawdust clinging to me. And in that moment it didn't feel like a house anymore. It felt like a shelter for someone else's life. Brandon glanced over his shoulder. Didn't stop pouring drinks. "You're just Mom's husband," he said, voice flat, as if I were interrupting a broadcast. Katie snorted. "Trying to play Dad again?" she muttered, filming the mess with her phone. She caught me in the frame. I saw the screen. Paused on my face, the creased brow, the worn eyes, the fatigue she mistook for weakness. Laughter. Mocking. It wasn't just the mess. It wasn't just the noise. It was the realization that they weren't embarrassed. Not even a flicker of guilt for the ruined carpet, the broken banister, the house that looked more like a dive bar than a home. No shame. No apology. Just amusement. That was the word that hurt the most. They were amused by me. I had to step out of the room. I couldn't look at them. I walked slowly down the hall, past the kitchen I renovated with my own hands, past the family portraits where I stood always a little to the side, past the office door I had learned to shut because privacy was no longer respected. Amy's voice floated from upstairs. She was on the phone, laughing. I didn't bother calling her down. I sat at my desk. My office, the only place in this house that didn't carry their fingerprints. Hardwood floor, quiet lighting, files, papers, a small bourbon glass I hadn't used in weeks. I stared at my monitor and pulled up the banking dashboard. Brandon's card. Cancelled. He'd find out when he tried to fill the tank of the car I'd leased under my name. Katie's. Locked. Maybe she'd feel it next time she tried to buy her monthly art supply restock. I moved next to the health insurance portal. Their names disappeared with a few keystrokes. They weren't my dependents. Not anymore. Then the will. I opened the document, scanned the paragraphs. Their names were there, as if they'd earned something just by surviving under my roof. As if inheritance was a reward for presence, not for participation, not for respect. I deleted them, coldly, quietly. Amy's name remained, but even that line trembled in my chest. I hit save. The screen blinked. The document closed. That was it. We've been married 4 years. Amy and I. Not a fairy tale marriage, but not a disaster either. A real marriage, stitched together by compromise and effort. I came in with my own scars. She came in with Brandon and Katie. I have a son of my own. Zach, 14 now, quiet, bright, a reader, not a fighter. He's spent the last year trying to shrink himself inside this house, like being invisible was the only way to avoid becoming a target. Brandon made sure of that. Every time Zach tried to speak up, Brandon rolled his eyes. Katie smirked. Amy said, "Don't make it a big deal." But it was a big deal. It became a big deal the moment I started letting it slide. At first, the resentment came in whispers. Brandon calling me stepdaddy when he thought I couldn't hear. Katie asking if she could go to Rick's instead of dealing with me. They didn't say it to my face at first. They weren't that bold. But contempt feeds on comfort. And I gave them nothing but comfort. I covered Brandon's tuition deposit, paid in full before his senior year even started, just so he'd feel secure. I bought Katie a MacBook and an iPad with the drawing pen she said would change her life. Gave them both cars when they turned 16, used but clean, insured and maintained. Rick never did any of it. Their biological father. A shadow at best. A ghost at worst. He lives a few blocks over, in a rented townhome with peeling paint and a second-hand grill. He shows up when it's convenient. Gives advice he never had to live through. Then disappears. But they adore him. They defend him. He's the parent that gets remembered in Christmas cards. I'm the one who pays for Christmas. They never forgot to tell me that. Not once. One night last fall, I asked Katie about the missing phone charger from my office. She'd taken it. She admitted it with a shrug, then followed up with, "You're not my dad, just Mom's husband." Amy was in the next room. She heard it, didn't say anything. I felt it like a slap that night. Not the sentence. I've heard worse. But the silence after. The quiet agreement of a woman who didn't want to rock the boat, even if the boat was sinking under me. It's strange how the first cracks don't sound like shattering. They sound like sighs, like footsteps walking away, like silence where you expected support. You don't notice the fracture until the whole damn floor gives out beneath you. The next morning, I watched Brandon try to order from DoorDash. His card declined. He stared at the screen like it betrayed him. Katie came down the stairs holding her iPad. "Why's the Wi-Fi not working?" she said, already annoyed. I'd flipped the switch. Weeks ago, I'd separated the electrical panel. One side for the master wing, kitchen, and my office. The other for the upstairs bedrooms and their devices. Just in case. Amy had called me paranoid when I hired the electrician. Now it served its purpose. I turned to them both in the hallway. Held up a manila folder thick with printed bills, statements, accounts. I dropped it on the entryway table. "You wanted a house without rules?" I said, my voice low, deliberate. "Now you'll live in it without resources." Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it. Katie looked pale. For the first time in years, they didn't have a comeback. And it was quiet. Blessedly quiet. Not from peace, but from stunned recognition. They had taken so much. They hadn't once stopped to consider what would happen if the hand that fed them finally clenched into a fist. They looked to Amy. She said nothing. No smirks. No laughter. Just a woman realizing, maybe for the first time, that I wasn't bluffing anymore. Zach came down late, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at me, then at them, then at the power button on the microwave flashing blank. "Something happen?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Just cleaning up a mess, son." He nodded back. Went to make his cereal. Didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. He'd lived through the mess. He knew what it meant when it finally started getting cleaned up. That evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and my ledger. Old school. Pen and paper. A list of expenses, obligations, accounts to close or convert. Every time I crossed something off, it felt like breathing again. Not revenge. Not anger. Just clarity. I'd given them everything. Shelter. Transportation. Medical care. Education. Freedom. And in return, I'd been reduced to a footnote. A man who stood in the doorway of his own house, ignored. So I took the first step toward erasing the lie. If I'm nobody, then I won't act like somebody when the bill arrives. Let's see who they turn to when the lights don't come on. Let's see what love looks like when it's not bought. It started with the little things. Always does. Katie used my credit card to order makeup, $249 worth, without asking. She laughed when I brought it up. Said, "It's not like you're poor." Like that excused theft. Like my effort was a punchline. Brandon had his friends over one weekend while Amy and I were at dinner. They drank in my office. I came home to find the lock broken, my camera lens shattered on the floor, and someone had gone through my drawers. Business files, contracts, tax records. I stood there staring at the mess, heart pounding like a war drum, waiting for the apology that never came. I confronted him, calmly, no yelling, just the facts. He didn't even try to lie. "You're not our real parent," he said, leaning against the fridge, arms folded, mouth twisting into that smug grin he inherited from Rick. "Why would we listen to you?" I didn't respond right away, because there was no response that mattered anymore. When you've spent 4 years walking through fire for people who refuse to recognize your hand on the hose, words are ash in your mouth. I stared at him for a long time, not angry, just empty. He turned away, muttered something about control freaks, and went back upstairs. Amy was quiet that night. She always was when things like this happened. I sat next to her on the couch while the TV played something neither of us were watching. I told her it had to change, that I wouldn't keep absorbing this. She nodded. She always nodded. But her nods came without action. They were hollow, safe gestures, the kind you give to keep the night moving toward sleep. And that was the beginning of the end. The next week was when it turned. Zach won a science award. Regional level. Out of dozens of schools. It wasn't just some participation trophy. It was the kind of recognition that comes from effort, passion, hours spent bent over experiments while the rest of the house ignored him. He brought it home, beaming, held the plaque like it was made of gold. For a moment, just a moment, the house felt like it had purpose again. Like maybe, just maybe, all the sacrifice was worth it. Then Brandon saw it. We were sitting at the kitchen table. Zach had just unwrapped the certificate from its envelope. Brandon walked in, headphones around his neck, saw the plaque, and snorted. "Daddy's favorite gets trophies for breathing," he said, loud enough for Zach to hear, loud enough to K*LL the joy in the room. Zach's smile faded. He slid the award back into the envelope. Didn't say a word. Amy turned from the sink. "Brandon," that's all she said. His name. No reprimand. No defense of Zach. No correction. Nothing that would make a 17-year-old boy think twice about crushing his younger stepbrother's pride. I looked at her, waiting. She looked away. That was it. The final crack. The moment I stopped asking questions and started closing doors. I went to my office that night and pulled the bills. Brandon's phone? Still on my account. Gone. Katie's streaming subscriptions? Linked to my card. Gone. Their Uber accounts. Their Spotify. Their family car fuel cards. Gone, gone, gone. I had already installed the subpanel. Split the electricity across the home. Amy thought it was over**LL when I did it. "It's not a duplex," she laughed. She didn't laugh when the lights went out in the upstairs bedrooms. The next morning, Brandon came downstairs holding his phone like it had insulted him. "What the hell happened to the Wi-Fi?" Katie followed, tablet in hand, frozen screen. "Is the internet down?" I sat at the table, cup of coffee, folder of printed bills. "No," I said. "I shut it off." Brandon scoffed. "You can't just." "I can," I said. "And I did." He stared at me, jaw twitching. I stood, walked into the hallway, opened the hall closet, and pulled out a cardboard box. Dumped it on the floor in front of them. Phone bills, school payments, car receipts, food delivery orders at 2 in the morning. Every single one, my name on the statement. "You wanted to live without my rules?" I said. "Now try it without my resources." Katie's face drained of color. Brandon stepped back. Silence. Zach poked his head out of the kitchen, eyes wide. I gave him a nod. Just a small one. He disappeared again, quietly. Amy came downstairs 10 minutes later. Hair wet, robe tied too loose. She looked around, saw the box, saw the faces. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She looked in the box. Her hands hovered over the bills, the printed screensh**TS. Then she turned to me. "Are you serious?" I looked her dead in the eye. "I'm done. If I don't have a say, I won't have a cost." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And for once, I didn't fill the silence for her. That night, I changed the passwords to everything. Amazon, Netflix, Uber. I even revoked their access to my Microsoft subscription. Petty? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. Entitlement grows in shadow. So I lit a torch and watched it burn. Brandon found out at the gas station. Tried to fill up the car, the one I paid for, the one with my name on the lease. The pump declined. 3 times. He came home furious, slamming doors like tantrums were currency. Katie cried when she couldn't log into her art classes. "I have assignments due," she shouted. I didn't raise my voice. Not once. "You want to be treated like an adult," I said. "Then carry your own weight." She screamed at me, said I was heartless, said Rick would never do this, and that was the last card she had left. "Then live with Rick," I said. "See how far his love pays your bills." She left the room, slammed the door. I heard her on the phone minutes later, talking fast, furious, afraid. She called Rick. I know she did. I could hear his voice on speaker, blaming me, calling me a control freak, promising to fix it. He didn't show up. Not that night. Not the next. He never does. Amy cornered me in the kitchen the following morning. "You're going too far," she said, eyes red. "They're just kids." I handed her the receipts. Alcohol deliveries at 3 a.m. Uber rides from neighborhoods I didn't recognize. App charges that made me nauseous. "These aren't kids," I said. "These are young adults raised to believe consequences are optional. They're going through a phase," she whispered. "They'll grow out of it." "No," I said. "They'll grow into it, unless someone stops them." She leaned against the counter, pale, silent. "Then, did you really change the will?" I looked at her, let the weight of the silence settle between us. "I leave my legacy to people who treat this home like theirs," I said. "Everyone else? Just passing through." She didn't ask again. That week, Brandon moved in with Rick. It was quiet. No farewell. No apology. He took his bags, slammed the door, and didn't look back. Amy didn't follow him. She didn't stop him. I think a part of her knew it had to happen. Katie stayed. But something changed. She stopped speaking to me, stopped demanding, paid for her own internet. Rick installed a private line. She started washing her own laundry, stopped eating with us. But she never said it again. Not once. "You're not my dad." That phrase died on her tongue the moment the lights went out. Zach started smiling again. He ate breakfast in peace. Sat on the porch with me in the mornings, coffee for me, cocoa for him. He talked about school, about science, about books he was reading. He didn't flinch when Brandon wasn't around, didn't shrink when Katie passed through. And I realized maybe I hadn't done this out of revenge. Maybe I did it for him. For the only one in that house who still looked at me like I mattered. Respect doesn't come from DNA. That's a lie we tell ourselves to excuse bad behavior. Respect comes from boundaries. And for the first time I had drawn one. Not in sand, but in stone. Amy didn't speak to me for 2 days. Not really. She hovered in the same rooms, made small noises in the kitchen, opened and closed drawers louder than she needed to. But not once did she look me in the eye. I'd ask if she needed something from the store. She'd shrug. I'd say good night. She'd nod, already turned away. I'd been married before. I knew what that silence meant. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't sadness. It was guilt, twisted into anger because it had nowhere else to go. I didn't try to fix it. You don't throw ropes to people who watched you drown. Instead, I went to work. I came home. I paid the bills, the ones that mattered. Zach's school fees, the mortgage, my truck, groceries for the kitchen I still considered mine. I let the rest rot. Katie's power went out again on Friday. She knocked on my door. First time in weeks. "Do you know why my room doesn't have power again?" she asked. I looked up from my laptop. Her face was pale. No anger this time. No attitude. Just confusion with a whisper of fear. "You didn't pay Rick," I said simply. "That's his line. You wanted independence. You've got it." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. I added, "Or you can use the main breaker downstairs. Reconnect your panel. But if you touch my side of the house again, I'll call the police. You're not on the title. That makes it trespassing." Her mouth opened, then closed. She left without another word. And I heard her crying in her room that night. Good. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because tears meant something had finally pierced the skin. Maybe loss would teach what love never did. Brandon didn't last long at Rick's. 3 weeks. That's how long it took before he texted Amy. "Can I come back just for a night?" She asked me what to say. I said, "It's your son. Your answer." She hesitated. "If he does, where would he stay?" I shrugged. "He's not welcome in my house. That much hasn't changed." She said nothing to that. But she didn't invite him. That night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. Soft, muffled. I didn't go in. Some grief has to be earned in solitude, especially when you helped build it. Then came the letters. One from the insurance company. One from the school registrar's office. Another from the phone carrier, flagged account delinquent. Amy left them on the counter for me. I left them there until she finally asked, "Are you going to do something about these?" I looked at her. Slow. Measured. "No," I said. She blinked. "You're just going to let it all fall apart?" I sipped my coffee. "It's already fallen. I'm just refusing to hold up the rubble." "Jesus, Mark," she muttered. "You're talking like they're strangers." I looked her dead in the eye. "They treated me like one. I'm just agreeing." She didn't argue. Just turned, walked out, left the letters behind. I picked them up, tore them in half, dropped them in the trash. That was the new rule. I only open envelopes addressed to people who treat me like a person. A week later, Katie came to me. Her face had changed. It wasn't just the dark circles under her eyes or the tired posture. It was something deeper, like the part of her that always looked for a way around consequences had finally run out of detours. She had a paper in her hand. "I got a bill," she said, "for my art class. I forgot it wasn't prepaid this semester. They said if I don't cover it by the end of the month, I lose my portfolio slot." She stood there in the hallway. No phone, no smugness, no TikTok-ready glare. Just a girl who had run out of rescue boats. I waited. She swallowed. "I know you don't owe me anything. I know I messed up. If you ever wanted to help again, I promise I won't take it for granted." I looked at the paper. It wasn't much. Maybe $1,000. I'd spent that in a single day last year getting her car detailed and resprayed after she hit a guardrail and blamed the weather. I nodded. "I'll pay it," I said. She blinked. "You will?" I nodded again. "Not because I'm your father. I'm not. You made that clear." She looked down at her shoes. "I'm paying it," I continued, "because you finally learned what something costs." She whispered thank you and turned to leave. That night, I heard her offer to do the dishes. She didn't slam a single door. Brandon took longer. 6 months. He didn't text Amy again. Didn't reach out. I figured he was couch surfing with Rick or staying with friends. That kind of silence usually comes from pride or fear. Maybe both. Then one night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hey, it's Brandon. Can we meet?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed. "Where?" We met at a diner on the edge of town. Neutral territory. He looked different. Not broken. Not humbled. Just aware. That was new. He sat across from me. No smile. No posturing. He didn't start with excuses. "I was an asshole," he said. I nodded. "I treated you like sh*t. I thought Rick being my real dad meant something. But he's not. He's not built for this. He doesn't show up. Not unless Mom begs him. And even then," he trailed off. I let the silence do its work. After a while, he leaned forward. "I'm not asking for money," he said. I wanted to say sorry. I know it's late. I just didn't want you to think I never saw it." I nodded again. "You were never supposed to be my dad," he added. "But you did more than he ever did. I didn't see it then. I do now." He waited. I picked up my coffee. Sipped. Set it down. "You still staying with Rick?" I asked. He shook his head. "Moved out. Got a job. Crappy apartment, but it's mine." I nodded once more. We didn't hug. Didn't cry. We just sat there, two men learning how to speak across the wreckage they helped create. I didn't forgive him that night, but I started to remember what it felt like to not resent him. And that was something. Zach was waiting for me when I got home. He was sitting on the porch, reading. When he saw me pull into the driveway, he stood, walked over and said, "Was it him?" I nodded. Zach didn't ask what we said. Didn't ask if I was angry. He just sat beside me and said, "I'm glad you stood up for yourself." I put my hand on his shoulder. That kid, that boy I raised without flash or favors, had watched it all unfold. He'd seen me absorb every hit, seen me stagger, seen me stop, And somewhere in that silence, he'd learned how to be a man. Not by what I bought, but by what I finally refused to buy anymore. Amy never said thank you. Not when the bills disappeared. Not when Katie got her class paid. Not when Brandon found his way back to decency. She moved through the house like a shadow. I don't think she ever forgave me, because to forgive me, she'd have to admit I was right. And that kind of confession costs more than most people are willing to pay. So we lived like ghosts in the same house. Meals shared, but not together. Bedrooms quiet, but heavy. Sometimes I caught her staring at the back of Zach's head, like she was trying to figure out how he turned out so different. She never asked. She didn't have to. The answer was simple. He watched me. He listened. He chose. And now, so did I. So I ask you, what's a father? Is it biology or sacrifice? Is it proximity or presence? I spent years pouring water into a cracked foundation, thinking someday it would hold. Didn't. It wasn't built to, so I stopped pouring. And suddenly, the cracks became visible to everyone else. It's strange. The moment you stop giving is the moment people start listening. They don't hear love in your yes, only in your no. So here's my no to being ignored, used, dismissed. To being the man who bled so others could feast. I won't be their wallet. I won't be their excuse. I won't be their ghost. If they want to build something with me now, they know where to find me. But I won't beg. I won't chase. Because this house may have been paid with my money. But peace? That was paid with my silence. And I'm done being quiet. A month passed. Then another. The house changed. Not all at once. But like a wound healing in places you forgot you'd been cut. No slamming doors. No stomping upstairs. No muffled mockery through walls too thin to hide it. Katie stayed. Her silence wasn't punishment anymore. It was effort. She started eating at the table again. Not every meal. Just enough to say, I'm still here. She cooked once. Pasta. Oversalted. Burnt at the bottom. She left the pot in the sink and a note that read, I'll do better next time. I washed it. Not as a father. Not even as a stepfather. Just as a man who recognized something he hadn't seen in a long time. Remorse not wrapped in manipulation. Zach noticed too. He sat closer to her at dinner. Asked her about her sketches. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of her moods. Not of being mocked. That boy had lived too long like a guest in his own home, waiting for kindness like it was borrowed time. He smiled more now. Sometimes I forgot how long it had been since I'd seen that. Amy tried to repair things in the way people do when they won't say the words. She cleaned my office. Ordered my favorite brand of coffee without asking. Picked up Zach from school instead of asking me to leave work early again. But she never said, you were right. Never said, I should have stood by you. And maybe that silence was louder than everything that came before it. One night, I asked her, do you regret it? Letting them treat me like that? She didn't answer at first. Then, I didn't think it would last forever. What? I asked. The way they treated you, she said. I thought it was just a phase, that they'd grow out of it. And if I just kept the peace long enough, it would pass. I looked at her, this woman I'd spent 4 years building a life with. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt something worse. Distance. You kept the peace, I said. But it wasn't peace for me. It was war you didn't see. She looked like she might cry. But she didn't. She never did when it counted. Just wiped the counter. Kept cleaning something that wasn't dirty. Like that would fix the stain. Then one night, Katie returned from her part-time job and knocked on my door. She never knocked before. I opened it. She had an envelope. I paid the rest of the art class, she said. What you covered helped. But I wanted to do the rest myself. She handed me the receipt like it was proof she could be someone different. I don't want to be that person anymore, she said. I nodded. You don't have to like me, she added. I hope you don't hate me. I didn't speak right away. I stepped aside, gestured toward the hallway. You hungry? She hesitated. Yeah. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't dissect it. We just ate. And maybe that was enough. Brandon took longer. I figured he would. He was the kind who had to burn every bridge before he realized he didn't know how to swim. But one evening, months after we last spoke, I got a text. Still have that socket set in the garage? My car's making a sound. I didn't reply. Not right away. I waited until the next morning and sent. It's still there. If you come by, knock first. He came on Saturday. Didn't bring anything but his hands. He walked into the garage like a kid entering a church. Slow, careful, eyes scanning the walls for something familiar. I didn't think you'd let me come back, he said. I didn't, I replied. I said knock. He didn't laugh. That was good. He picked up the socket set, ran his fingers over it like it meant something. Thanks, he said. I nodded. He turned to leave, then paused. I got a job. Not much, but it's steady. And I'm taking night classes. It's harder than I thought. It usually is, I said. He looked at me the way a boy looks at a man he used to challenge, and said something I didn't expect. Mom said you changed the will. I held his gaze. I did. He nodded slowly. I get it, he said. I just wanted you to know. You weren't wrong. About any of it. I didn't answer. Just watched him leave. But that night, I opened the document again. Didn't change anything. Not yet. But I looked at it differently. Amy asked me once if I thought things were getting better. I told her the truth. I think they're getting clearer. That's not the same thing as better. Clarity is cold. Clean. Sharp. It doesn't heal you. But it stops the bleeding. And for the first time, I wasn't bleeding in this house. I was standing. Fully. Without apology. I found Zach in the garage one afternoon, tinkering with an old keyboard he was trying to repair. He looked up when I stepped in. Need something? He asked. I shook my head. Just checking in. He smiled. Everything okay? I looked around. At the shelves I built. The tools in their place. The order. And I nodded. Yeah, I said. It is. He went back to his project. And I stood there for a while, just watching him. Quiet, focused, growing up in a house that finally was teaching him the right lessons. Not just about work or school, but about worth, about what you do when people strip it from you, about how you earn it back. Later that week, Katie slipped a note under my door. Not a text, not a post-it, a real note, folded, handwritten. I read it twice. I used to think love meant getting everything. Now I think it means losing something and still showing up. No signature. Didn't need one. I think about that night a lot. The night Brandon said, "You're not our real parent." The way the words hung in the air. The way Amy said nothing. The way I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. I've replayed it more times than I'll admit. But not to feel hurt. Not anymore. I replay it to remind myself where the line was drawn. Because clarity doesn't come when you beg for it. It comes when you say, enough. When you walk through your own house and finally stop apologizing for standing in it. So here we are. Zach's birthday is coming up. He asked for a book. Not a phone. Not a game. A book about engineering. I'm planning a small dinner. Just him and me. Maybe Katie if she wants to come. I won't ask Amy. I won't ask anyone anymore. I invite. They choose. That's the only way respect works. Brandon sent another message last week. Picture of a used car. Rusted. Ugly. Not much. But it's mine. I replied, that's how it starts. He sent back a thumbs up. No begging. No jokes. Just a son, maybe not by blood, trying to learn the steps he skipped. Amy hasn't brought up the will again. She knows it's still changed. She doesn't ask if her name is still there. I think she knows the answer. I haven't decided what I'll do about it. But I know this. You don't leave your legacy to people who treat it like scrap. You leave it to those who learned how to build. To those who felt the floor collapse and didn't blame you for finally walking away. So now I sit here, writing this, not for sympathy, not for praise, but because there's something I want to ask. Not just to you, but to any man out there who's ever felt it. The silence, the dismissal, The invisible weight of being someone else's anchor while they mock the chain. Was I wrong? To cut them off? To draw the line where my name ends and their contempt began? Was I wrong to say, if I'm not your father when I give, then I won't be one when you ask? Or was that the only way left to be seen? Not as a wallet, not as a punching bag, but as a man. One who stayed when their father left. One who gave until there was nothing left to give. One who finally said no. You tell me, would you have endured it? Or would you, like me, have rewritten the terms of your silence? Because sometimes to become a father figure, you have to stop being their ATM first.